Hello, Dr. Dan Miller here, Historical Solutions LLC. We are primed and ready for episode 57 of On the 250 River with Dr. Dan, 250 years ago this week. Now, our week, episode 57, is ending in the day January 8th. 1776. It's hard to believe we've turned the page into a new year. By the way, welcome back to me from a 2-week hiatus to enjoy the holidays with friends and family, and I'm glad to be back. Though, hope you had a good stretch of days there as well. Let's get right to it. I want to thank our sponsor for today, who is the printer Robert Bell, who operates a print shop at 3rd Street in downtown Philadelphia 250 years ago today. Thank you, Mr. Bell, for sponsoring our episode. And we won't keep you long, Mr. Bell, because we know you've got something you're quite busy on, which is finishing up a 1,000-run production of a small 46-page pamphlet that you're trying to get out the door and get onto your shelves by tomorrow, January the 9th, and onto the street tomorrow, January the 9th, across Philadelphia. It's a 1,000 print run, as I said, and it's got the short title called Common Sense. So we will let Mr. Bell get to his business so he can crank that out as they wind down on those last few copies. He's our sponsor, and he's also a connection to our fifth spot on our top 5. So let's start out. Thomas Paine, Common Sense. Thomas Paine is the immigrant from the British Isles who's been in the New World, been in America since, for about a year or so, maybe a little longer. Brought over here by Benjamin Franklin, encouraged to come here by Benjamin Franklin. He's tried his hand at various things in his life, hasn't really been that good at them. He is very good, though, as a writer, and he's good as a kind of a public commentator and temperature taker and those types of things. And he's written an essay, 46 pages long, that his new friend, Robert Bell, will be publishing onto the street tomorrow. And Common Sense is its title, and it's vitally important. And just so you know, here it is. The contents of it are straightforward. It's in language that you'd hear at the tavern or on the docks or in some kind of ordinary gathering of people on the street. The imagery is the same way, and the target of this is the British King, George III. And basically he spends 46 pages saying that George III is nothing more than a glorified bank robber. All of British monarchs are nothing but glorified bank robbers also. And the biggest joke on the human scene is the joke of divine right by godly ordained monarchical rulers. Forget it, Paine says. Get rid of them. Get out of them. Let's get on with our own thing here in America, meaning let's get on with independence in a new nation, free of these idiot bank robber equivalents that call themselves kings and queens. And that's about the way the language runs, by the way. And so tomorrow that hits the street. That's number 5. And today, now, 4 on our top 5 list is going to be a group of people, and I don't know their names. I don't even know how many there are, but I'm going to speculate there's probably about a half a dozen to a dozen, 6 to 12 folks. They live in Albany, New York. They've been called out on an emergency basis because the word is that the artillery train that's being led by Colonel Henry Knox, dragging, hauling, lifting, carrying cannon from Fort Ticonderoga on Lake Champlain, New York, trying to get to the outskirts of Boston to create out of nothing an artillery department for George Washington as he tries to take control of Boston from the British redcoats. He can't do it without artillery. He doesn't hardly have any. This is his only hope at getting some. Knox is dragging them all this way, and some of them have fallen through the ice of the Hudson River. Some of the cannons sink like a stone, and they're at the bottom of that frozen river. And some folks in Albany say, you know what? We live by the river. We die by the river, and we can help you rescue your lost cannon from the bottom of the river. And so these 6 to 12 people make their way out there, freezing cold, onto the ice, taking ropes and chains and pickaxes and pulleys and levers and God knows what all. And by thunder, they get those cannon up from the bottom of that frozen river, back on track, and Knox is on his way again. It's a miraculous thing that they do, because every cannon counts in terms of what Washington needs. And before his group leaves Albany, Knox thanks them, of course, profusely. He's 25 years old, just so you know. As a leader, he thanks them profusely, and in an interesting gesture decides to name some of the cannon the Albany, or one of the cannon the Albany, that they fished out of the river. Really interesting thing. Here's my leadership question for you, and I know I bounced past the one for the common sense. We'll pick it up here in a second. But my leadership question for you here with Knox and this business: what's your instinct as a leader in being able to grab on to these kind of symbolic gestures and moments as they float by or sink down, as the case may be? What are you good at that? Do you have a natural feel for that, or is that something maybe in the new year you ought to work on? Knox, at 25 years old, naming that cannon the Albany, clearly has a little bit of a natural gift at being able to pick up on gestures and symbols. That's your leadership question. Let me peel back to our fifth, right? Sorry, I'm out of order. Your leadership question for common sense. The next time you're doing some big piece of communication, let's say it's written, something more than an email, some written kind of communication, whether it's you or you with AI or whatever the case may be. Are you going to be aware that you're breaking new ground? Or are you going to be aware that what you're doing is collecting existing stuff into a coherent whole? While we're talking about common sense again, sorry for the out of order, I just want to point out to you, Payne's strength here is in using language he's hearing on the street. He's using ideas he hears on the street. Payne doesn't create anti-king sentiment. Payne doesn't create hatred of monarchs. He's just picking it up off the street, bundling it together into a kind of an interesting new form. All right? So from his standpoint, he's taking existing stuff and packaging it together in an interesting way. He's not breaking new ground. I ask you, when you have your next big communication, take a step back, take a moment, and ask yourself, am I breaking new ground, which means this, or am I collecting existing stuff that's already around me, which means that? Okay, on to number three of our top 5. I'm going to call this War's Woes. As we start the new year of 76, first week, we're completing the first week of January and another day on top of it. Man, from a military standpoint, things are already going badly. That two-pronged invasion that was going to end up in Quebec, and the seizure of Quebec and the welcoming of the Canadians as the 14th colony, it's a disaster. It failed. It's a flop. One commander, co-commander, is dead. The other co-commander is seriously wounded. We've got people who are POWs. 30% of the force is either dead, wounded, or captured. It's a bust. In Virginia, Norfolk has been burned to the ground by the British as they've retreated. Lord Dunmore, as he's retreated on out to the Chesapeake Bay on board British ships, he's giving up his effort to keep control or regain control of Virginia for the imperial cause or the imperial side. As he's doing so, he just sets fire to Norfolk as a kind of an FU on the way out. What's weird and what's worse is that for all the destruction that he unleashes in the 8th largest town of the colonies, which is Norfolk, the patriot side or the rebel side or the pro-colonial American side rushes into town as he's leaving, as he's retreating, and starts to plunder and pillage and riot in the town itself. They actually create more destruction in Norfolk than Dunmore does. And then number 3 in South Carolina, a 2-month campaign called the Snow Campaign, a series of smaller clashes between pro-imperial forces and pro-colonial forces has resulted in the pro-colonial forces getting control of South Carolina and kind of quieting that area down. However, one of the key leaders of that military effort, again called the Snow Campaign, Colonel Richard Richardson, is just quite upset, quite angry, quite distraught because he feels like he hasn't been supported. He hasn't had enough shoes for his men, enough clothes for his men, enough uniforms for his men, enough food and equipment for his men. A lot of his guys, 2,500 of them, a lot of those 2,500 guys are still suffering from severe frostbite, and he's really angry at having been let down by the people in charge of the pro-colonial, pro-American movement in South Carolina. He's very disillusioned. So, war has a lot of woe as we start the first week or end the first week of January from the colonial and the American perspective. It's not going well at all. Here's my leadership question for you. Is your new year, your own right now, has it started cleanly, orderly, kind of in the direction you want, or has it started a mess? Like I just outlined here from a military perspective. Let's go on to number 2 now of our top 5. Here's some data. 9,800 out of 20,000. I don't know what that is, 46%, 47%, something like that. That's what George Washington has managed to recruit for his, quote, new army, close quote, that's surrounding the British in Boston. The target was we're going to have 20,000 guys in our new army. It's going to be overhauled, reformed, better than ever. Truth is, reality is, actuality is, I've only got 9,800. We didn't even get halfway to our goal. There you are. Here's my leadership question for you. What's your key data as a leader? Whether you're looking at it right now or whether you're going to be looking at it soon, what's your key data really telling you? Little aside here, I'm 46% of your goal isn't good when you're at the end point of it. We need to have 20,000. I've got 9,800. But maybe there's other things to measure besides just the raw number. Maybe, how about the character of the people, the will of the people, their inner resolve of those people? Maybe 9,800 can do it. So, yeah, bad news, real bad news. 46-48% of our goals is best we could do. But maybe the personal and individual inner will of these people could be something special. So, remember what our question was here. What's your key data really telling you as of now? And then finally, number 1. We're going to stick with Washington. We're going to stick with these 9,800 actual guys as opposed to the 20,000 phantom guys that they were hoping to recruit. There's a group of black soldiers. One of the things that was decided, and you may remember me telling you this, or you read this in my Americanism Redux entry from a few weeks ago. It was decided by Washington and a handful of his generals, his core team, and a delegation from the Continental Congress. They all decided that we're going to reject free black men in our new army. We're not going to let them in. What that meant is that the existing free black men in the army weren't going to be allowed to re-enlist. Well, guess who didn't like that? Every free black man who had already enlisted and had already served over the past few weeks or few months or since the spring, 8 or 9 months ago. They said, the hell with that. We demand to be re-enlisted. We demand to be let in again. We demand to continue as soldiers. We've proven our mettle. Here's a shock. Washington and his core team and the Continental Congress do a 180. Probably because they don't have 20,000 guys. They do a 180 and they say, you know what? Okay. The free black men who are already in the Army can stay in the Army. I just want to point something out to you. And here's my leadership question for you in the same kind of vein. Are you open to other voices in relation to your most fundamental, basic message, your most fundamental, basic vision? Are you open to other voices? Those black soldiers are articulating the American Revolution before there's any declaration, before there's any quill pens on those sheets of paper, before there's any guys wearing white powdered wigs saying, I vote yes. Those free black soldiers are voting, hell yes, we're staying. So, it's a big idea. Remember what our big idea is. We were a union first. We were a nation second. Everything we just talked about is 6 months ahead of the Declaration of Independence. Everything we just went through on the top 5 is all about the union that is being conceived, conceptualized, and gestating prior to birth. One thing about this, there's been a debate in the Continental Congress, and remember, as the Union, there's been a debate that's wrapping up right now, 250 years ago, and it's about whether or not to say yes to the destruction of Boston. If those cannon make it back, remember the Albany and Henry Knox and all the others, if we get the cannon, if we get the ability, do we destroy Boston? Yes, we want to destroy the enemy. Yes, we want to kick the enemy out of Boston. But do we destroy the second largest community in British North America purposely? Because remember, most things are made out of wood. And when we start firing cannon in there, God knows what's going to happen. Look at what happened at Norfolk. Who has the authority? This is the debate in the Continental Congress. And they're finally coming around to saying we have the authority. Now, I liken this to Flight 93 on September 11th, 2001. Who's going to shoot down that airliner and kill all those American people on board in an attempt to prevent the next tragedy of the day? Who's going to shoot down that airliner? Who's got the authority? What they're debating in the Continental Congress 250 years ago is that moment on a much larger scale. Who has the authority? I'm Dr. Dan Miller. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hope you hang out on Americanism Redux, my latest entry that's on the website. I'll see you next week.